My name is Bill Newton. I'm one of the marketing associates here at Fpweb.net. With me today is Brad Gleeson, our Vice President of Client Development. Brad, welcome.
Thank you so much.
Glad you could come back and talk to us today about the private cloud and why the growing demand for that. Today's agenda. So we're going to talk about some of the reasons, or Brad's going to talk about some of the reasons why there's a growing interest in the private cloud, and those will surround public cloud outages, public cloud billing, and the multi-cloud strategy that is becoming more and more of a best practice. So then we'll take questions. Hopefully, if you think of any as this goes along, just go ahead and submit those, and we'll get them queued up for us to start tackling as soon as we get through the presentation. This will be 30 minutes in and out, and then at the very end, we'll give away a $50 Amazon gift card. Now, I know that's a bit ironic since this is a webinar about a private cloud, but it is a fan favorite.
You bet.
It's the gift card that keeps on giving. So, Brad, tell us about some of the recent public cloud outages.
Yeah, so part of the strategy here moving forward, we'll talk about this a little later, but there's concerns. I think a lot of folks made a jump initially due to budgeting and scalability and different other things that the public cloud offers. There was a big jump to going all in with the cloud, and we heard this a lot. The war is over, public cloud is won. Well, I think what ends up happening as a result is there are some people that did go all in with the public cloud, and a lot of the large enterprise folks who've done so have started rethinking that and maybe pulling some of the things out of public cloud and settling more into a hybrid type of solution. Part of the rationale for that too is security, and security is going to be a big factor moving forward, especially with public cloud, as a result of the security issues that sometimes faces the larger public cloud folks. A perfect example, AWS, February 28th, had an incident that affected the eastern U.S., and that took out Netflix, Tinder, Airbnb, Reddit, and IMDb. It took them down or offline for hours. So that was a big issue, earlier this year. And then following suit, Azure on March the 15th again affected the eastern U.S. for about 8 hours. This impacted a lot of different things on Azure. It impacted the virtual machines, Azure Media Services, Application Insights, Azure Logic Apps, Azure Data Factory, excuse me, also Azure Site Recovery, Azure Cache, Azure Search, Azure Service Bus, Azure Event Hubs, and Azure SQL Database. A couple other ones, API Management and Azure Stream Analytics, were also all affected by this. So this wasn't something that it affected a lot of folks.
Yes, in several different ways.
Yes,
right.
in many different ways, actually. And then Office 365 also had a global outage March 22nd. So anybody or folks that had solutions based in those areas felt the impact during that time period. So these are all concerns, and these are valid concerns about being in public cloud as far as that's concerned.
Absolutely. I mean, the implications there are pretty far-reaching. Not to mention the fact, there's downtime eventually somewhere, everywhere, I suppose. But the fact that all three of those major public cloud vendors all had downtime like that just in the past couple months, it is telling.
Well, and I think it sent a message.
Exactly.
And for folks that are aware of it, look, the bottom line is understand some things will work in the cloud, some things will work better in private solutions. Public sometimes is fine, but also know that security is something that's not to be taken lightly and not to be overlooked.
Okay. So another reason, to consider the growing demand for private cloud would be some of the billing issues with public cloud providers. Well, tell us about those.
Right. So one of the things that you're finding out, especially if you're already in the public cloud, I don't have to tell you a lot of these, but billing can be somewhat inconsistent. A lot of folks have been sold that, because it initially does look cheaper and it's a pay-as-you-go model, but that's not always the case on the back end. So the meter's always running, especially if you have persistent workloads, that can really add up. And of course, it's easy to scale, but you pay for every addition as well. So just make sure that you're your understanding of that and your CFO's understanding of that too as you move into the public cloud.
Absolutely. I mean, Brad, you've spoken about this in the past about the savings of long-term infrastructure, offloading that, going to the cloud and being able to not have to maintain or to replace expensive server equipment. And so that initial upfront cost looks so attractive at first, but when Brad's talking about every little thing that adds on, any sort of persistent workload, keeping the meter running, and every month that bill is not the same.
Right. So this kind of goes back to the conversation we had quite a bit here, which is OpEx versus CapEx.
Sure.
And a lot of folks made the move under the idea that we're going to be in a pretty tight OpEx model moving forward for those folks who are going all in on the cloud. And unfortunately, that's just not the case. It's just not reality. As a matter of fact, it's going to be getting even more outside that bracket as time moves forward. Microsoft, as a matter of fact, just made a recent change that you can no longer lock in a rate for Office 365 or Azure. This is subtle but important because it allows Microsoft to raise prices as they see fit. And this is one of those issues where we've talked to a lot of folks who have gone there because Microsoft and other folks have offered the world $15,000, $20,000 in product, to get you in.
Right.
But you almost have to start wondering why they're doing that, right? Do they not think they're going to recoup that on the back end? And some folks are experiencing higher increases than initially anticipated, much quicker than I think a lot of folks anticipated as well.
Absolutely. That's a good point, and a good case study too to keep in mind. All right, so that brings us to the multi-cloud strategy and how that's become more and more of a best practice for enterprises and medium-sized businesses looking at where to put their data.
The hybrid model is by far the way that the industry is really moving and companies are really moving toward at this point. So the hybrid model consists of some of your data being on site or on premises, some being in a public cloud, because again, there is scale and there is not only scalability, but there's also there are good price considerations when you first get in, and then also private cloud, because all of your data should not be in. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. We've talked about that in the past as well. So current buzzword, we're reaching critical mass, right? So avoid the eggs in one basket. Spreading workloads across multiple providers to insulate from outages is a must.
Yeah.
And it's really the smartest practice. So you want to have a good blend. Some folks will just do private and public cloud because they are entirely moving off-prem. We understand that. Some folks will never move off-prem because of the high sensitivity of some of the data. They won't trust either the public or private cloud scenarios, but it typically is a good mix moving forward if you're doing all three or two, but not all in one. Doesn't typically make a lot of sense.
Absolutely. Now, we're not saying the public cloud is all bad.
It's not.
Okay.
It is not. There's just things that you need to be aware of.
Right.
And of course, we've been a partner with Microsoft for a long period of time, and there's things that are going to work very well in the public cloud. But you just want to be able to, question performance, question security, make sure that you're doing right by your company, and that you're the folks who hold the financial purse strings for your company are making the right decisions too. It's sometimes our job is to educate up and to make sure that they understand it's not just about the dollars and the cents, but it can be about the dollars and the cents also if there's security issues or there's a compliance issues. It may end up costing you in the long run, so consider everything.
Absolutely. So Redmond Magazine recently just posted some findings from a survey, and they found that nearly a third of organizations have SharePoint hybrid users, and nearly half still have deployments that are entirely on premises, and 22% use SharePoint online via Office 365. But more than half of those surveyed in this survey published by Redmond Magazine have cloud-based implementations of SharePoint. Yet they claim that they have plans to transition entirely to the online version. And then another survey we saw from last summer by IDG, it found that 52% of respondents say they plan to adopt a hybrid cloud strategy in the next 12 to 24 months. So that speaks to that critical mass we're talking about. It's not a new concept.
Right. And a lot of companies, especially when you get into large or even small and medium-sized enterprise companies, there may have been plans for quite some time now to do an all-in type of strategy with the public cloud. But I think as more and more people are becoming educated to what the pitfalls are of doing something like that, more and more folks are adopting a hybrid type of solution, or at least now considering it moving forward before they pull the trigger on an all-cloud or an all-public type of solution.
Gotcha. To me, it reminds me of those financial planner, bits of advice or discussions that you read or hear that say, it reminded me when you said, oh, don't put your eggs in one basket, when they talk about diversifying your portfolio. There's got to be some similarities to that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So, the thing is, you're not going to go all in on just, the hot stock of the moment, right?
Okay.
Sometimes people are tempted to do that, and folks that have been out there before and have actually made trades based on, hey, I'm going all in with company X, I'm going to put all my eggs in one basket. Sometimes it doesn't work out very, very well, and you can draw the same analogy in this space as well. You want to have a diversified portfolio. It's the same in this space as well. You want to protect as much as you can and make sure that you've got as much up and running as possible too. So sometimes that can be very problematic if all of your eggs are indeed in one basket.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. So we've talked about, how public cloud outages have been one of the reasons why the private cloud is growing in popularity, or at least in demand. We've talked about how the billing structure of public clouds is another one of those main factors, and then the multi-cloud strategy being kind of a third major factor. So tell me more about why a private cloud should figure into all three of those.
Yeah. So number one, private cloud, secure and dedicated. Okay. So that's the number one thing. You're going to have private is just what it says. You're going to be in a more isolated area, if you will, and you're in a specific position where you don't know where your data lives versus you do when you're in a private cloud. Compliance is also a big one. You know exactly where your data is, data center certifications, and all of those things are up to date, so you're covered there. Also, you talk a little bit about unmetered and versus rent controlled, and what that kind of looks like. And obviously, when you're in those situations where, again, OpEx model, CFOs, what they really want is to have a very good handle on what's coming in and what's going out. And so that, again, that was the idea with the way that the public cloud was being pitched initially. But understand that we're seeing more and more folks who've come to us and basically have talked about the fact that they're in a situation now where they're getting charged more and more for something that they thought was going to be inclusive or a part of an all-inclusive resort, if you will.
Yeah.
And then you get to the resort and you find out, oh no, wait, you want water. Oh, well, that costs extra, and so I'm with that beach chair out by the beach. I thought that would come with it. No, you actually got to rent that from the rental. So it's one of those situations where just understand what you're getting into there, and of course support. This is also access to help. I think a lot of people are also under the assumption that once you go to one of the public cloud providers, that support is just a phone call away, and that is not necessarily the case. You can absolutely get it. It's going to cost you more, and make sure that is detailed prior to your subscription.
Yeah, that's a good point. Okay. So what about FPweb? How can we be that private cloud provider for that multi-cloud strategy or any private cloud hosting need?
Absolutely. There are a lot of private cloud companies out there. We are one of them, and I think one of the things that you want to take a look at is experience. And we have 20 years experience with dedicated hosting in our secure private cloud, so that's a big consideration. We offer servers in our data centers for websites, applications, or databases, and you can always contact us to discuss storage, memory, vCPU, and your other unique needs as well. We can help you out regardless of what your situation is.
Absolutely. And the best way to find out more would be to visit our website, www.fpweb.net/cloud-server, or you can email Brad here at sales@fpweb.net. Give us a call. Toll-free number is 866-780-4678. And should we take some questions?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Sounds good.
So one question we have up here are, what are the cost differences between public? We always get the cost questions.
Seems to come up pretty quick,
that happens, right? So what are the cost differences between public and private, as well as on-prem? So it's hard to, this is part of the challenge with public cloud pricing. It's hard to get public cloud pricing because they're very vague. Yes. on what the pricing is actually going to be. So apples to apples is actually challenging as far as public cloud is concerned. Scalability and ease of use is best in public cloud, but it lacks in cost predictability, support, compliance, and security. Has those things, you're going to pay extra for them. Make sure that you ask about those items. Okay, that's first and foremost.
Yeah, it's funny. You were making the analogy earlier about the all-inclusive resort and how every little thing tacks on. It kind of reminds me of the airline industry, in that you and I could buy a plane ticket to go to the same destination, but get charged wildly different rates, depending on what we've added on, in terms of, I don't know, snacks, drinks.
Right. No, you're on the right track. So, anybody who's watching the video or they know I'm a big guy. Okay. And so the fact of the matter is, you and I could pay the same price for admission to that flight, right, but I might need some extra space. So I'm going to get charged more because it's the same seat, but I'm a bigger guy. I have more needs. I need more water. I need more snacks. So whatever the case might be, I'm going to pay for more of those. It's not inclusive with the price of admission or the price of the ticket.
Right. So it's easy to scale up, but you're going to pay for it.
That's exactly correct. All right. You bet.
That's good. All right. Let's see. We got a question here. Can you please explain the different types of offerings? Private cloud, public cloud, hybrid cloud, community, etc.
Yeah. So when you say explain the different types of offering, in a private cloud setting, we're basically talking about it depends on what you're looking to move, right?
Okay,
and so do you have Sharepoint? Are you trying to migrate that off-prem?
Mm-hmm.
What are you trying to do on-prem? Do you still want to keep on-prem? Are you migrating everything off of that? And then it really comes down to storage, and things that you're also going to want to look at is support. So do you have a team in place to support? If you do a migration into the public cloud, do you have a team that's going to support that? I think a lot of folks have been under the idea that if you migrate everything off-prem or into the public cloud and you don't have anything on-prem, you're being able to get rid of or scale down your IT team.
Right.
Well, okay, if you're doing that, who's supporting your environment in the public cloud? And of course, if you're doing that in the private cloud, if you're doing it with somebody like us, obviously we have those services for you as well. As a matter of fact, I'll take it one step further. If you're looking for support in a public cloud, we can still support you there. Our folks here at FPweb have the experience and the skill sets to be able to support you there from a managed services standpoint if you're going to be reducing your team for whatever the case.
All right, good. That's a great question. Keep them coming. Looks like we got one about security. So why would private cloud be more secure than a public cloud setting?
Great. So most public cloud services provide incident response, malware protection, and a range of disaster recovery failover profiles. However, because they operate such a large automated platform, there's a clear delineation of personalized data management responsibilities. So this is a big one. Being those of the customer is not, and not the provider. So that's something to keep in mind. Public cloud services infrastructures are secure, but unlike the data protection also provided by private cloud services, public clouds only protect their platform.
Just the platform.
Just the platform. And that's what you get when you move in. And then public clouds are shared by multiple tenants. We all know that, which means sharing performance problems as well. So public clouds are like a hotel. Each tenant has a door with a lock and a key that hotel management provides access to.
Okay.
So just kind of
I can see
compartmentalize it that way. Private clouds are dedicated to one tenant, which maximizes performance, and like a private resident, there's only one lock and key.
Gotcha. Okay.
I think that's the most general way to be able to explore that one. One of the other ones that we had just come in is on-prem the only alternative to private cloud? Again, springboarding off of the eggs in one basket. So it's not. Public cloud is one of those alternatives as well, but again, it's probably not wise to do any of those things. So if you're trying to move off-prem, and a lot of folks are trying to do that, and we totally sympathize with that, doing a hybrid model between private cloud and public cloud might be the best scenario for you.
Okay.
However, if you have really sensitive data, and all of it is, and there's compliance issues and so forth, price out what it would be to be in a private cloud, and then because with different providers from a private cloud standpoint, because some of that data, if it's across the whole board, might not be, you might not want it in the public cloud at all.
Right.
It depends on how critical and how sensitive that is, and what your compliance regulations are too. So all of those things come in measure, and you'll want to talk to private cloud providers about being able to give you that type of opportunity if that's your scenario.
Gotcha. So you're talking, public cloud is good for scalability, ease of use, that infrastructure as a service, but maybe not as much in security, compliance, that cost predictability. So
right, they're offered. Okay, I'm not saying that you can't get them there. It's just understand the price that you're going to pay for that same service in a public cloud setting versus a private cloud setting. And sometimes I think it makes a lot more sense for people to really look at the private cloud for the compliance, for security, and then when you then compare apples to apples regarding the price that you're going to pay for that same service in public versus private.
Gotcha. Okay, that's good. What about the differences in support between public and private cloud?
So the things that you really have to keep in mind, and it's always good to come back to what our SLA is from our company standpoint. So good to keep in mind, and this is not going to be uncommon regarding any provider that you end up choosing to potentially go private cloud. But in a public cloud setting, for us, if we're helping support people there, our SLA for a public cloud setting is about 30 minutes.
Okay.
It's about 45 minutes if you're on-prem. So that's the response time as far as that's concerned. If you're in the private cloud, our response time is 6 minutes. So you can see the differences that exist there as a result of that. So response time is one of the factors. Level of expertise is going to be another one, so making sure that you've got the right people doing the right job, and the location of that support. We've talked about this in the past as well. With some of the larger folks, depending on what your negotiated rate is for support, you may end up having to go through a very frustrating language and escalation process with some of the folks that you're doing business with.
Yes.
And that's not necessarily just public cloud, but that's also with some private cloud providers that are out there that are outsourcing some of that support overseas. So make sure that's a question that you ask as well. Of course, here at FPweb, we're all US based and located here in St. Louis.
Yeah, and when Brad talked about the level of expertise, it's worth noting that there's plenty of experts in the public cloud providers arsenal. The question is, are you getting a hold of them when you call? So. And how many calls, how many transfers will it be? How long until one of those experts actually starts working your support ticket?
And some of the things that we've seen too that's been problematic from an escalation standpoint is that really people only want to have to call and describe what the issue is once.
Yes.
If you're having to go through an escalation process where you're having to re-explain the issue time over and over again to multiple people, especially if there's a language barrier, but even if there isn't, that's still a frustrating process. So we want to make sure that you're getting things done as efficiently as possible.
Absolutely. This one says, how hard is it to migrate Sharepoint to a private cloud? So getting into a little more specific application.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not shocking because we've had, we're the first company to actually host SharePoint in the cloud, and we've been the first to host every version of SharePoint. So it depends. No two are alike. So one of the things that we do, and make sure whoever you provide is doing this, make sure you get a discovery. Okay, the discovery is critical to understanding. I call it the 80-20 rule. We're going to catch 80% of the things that are going to hold you up from a migration process. 20% still going to be there through the migration process, but we're severely limiting the effects of third-party web parts not migrating over and some of these things. So we want to make sure that those things are all addressed in a discovery, and we'll talk to you about what that looks like. Feel free to call or text or whatever you want to do. Get a hold of us and we'll talk to you about that. The versions are important too. So what version of SharePoint are you currently on? Are you on Foundation? Are you looking to move to Server? Are you on Server? And what version are you going from 2010 to trying to go to 2016? That's complex. Older, So it just depends on what your actual needs are. The size is also going to be something that you want to look at. Custom parts are really the thing. I've heard people before say, well, we've only got 500 gigs of data. It should be an easy migration, and this should cost next to nothing. It's not necessarily always the size of the data. I think that's kind of a misnomer. One of the things that can really hold up a migration is going to be custom parts. So that's something that you also want to make sure that depending on how many custom parts you have out there could really hold up a migration as well. We've done thousands, and we'll start with a discovery, and that's the best way to look at how long or how complex any migration is going to be.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, that's good. Good. This one says, can you help manage a multi-cloud strategy? When we were talking about, that best practice for many companies looking at, diversifying their portfolio.
Well, sure, because people are trying to consolidate, right?
Sure.
People really want to consolidate vendors, consolidate roles, and that's something where we could really help you, I think, in a hybrid model. We have managed services that provide expert, all USA-based, 24/7 absolute support on premises or in any cloud. And I think that's what a lot of folks are out there looking for. Again, response time, 45 minutes on-prem, 30 minutes public cloud, 6 minutes private cloud. And we don't care where your data lives. We'll take care of it no matter what your situation is.
Okay. This one says, are your data centers only in the U.S.? And how do you handle data privacy and data localization requirements from various countries?
That's a great question. And for us, yes, our data centers are partitioned here in the United States. We have our main data centers in St. Louis and in Kansas City. We do have international accounts, but we partition against those. So, for those compliance, those folks that need to be ITAR, or there's other compliance issues that you're facing, please give us a call. We'd love to talk to you about that. But yes, our two main data centers are in Kansas City and St. Louis.
Okay, very good. All right, do you see any other questions that I missed, Brad, when you look over or notes?
I don't think so.
Okay,
I mean,
we're running up against
this is a good one. We had a lot of good questions, and you might just want to tell them on our next webinar. We're kind of changing up the schedule a little bit. Give you guys a better experience moving forward as well, kind of expanding or cutting down our week to week.
We've been on a torrid pace, and I appreciate those that have joined us each week. And we're gonna take a couple weeks to prepare even a bigger and better one. Coming up May 9th. It'll be about managed infrastructure service, our network engineer, 1:00 p.m. Central Time. And I will send you a link to register for that next webinar. What did I say? May 9th? Yep.
That is correct.
Okay, so I'll send you a link to register for that one, along with a recording of today's webinar. And now it is time. Oh, and I should say that if I did miss your question, we go through the recording here, and I will make sure we get it to the right expert to answer offline. And if anything else comes up afterwards that you'd like to discuss, as Brad has said, your unique needs, reach out to him at sales@fpweb.net, and we'll get started on that as well.
You bet.
So let's announce our winner of the $50 Amazon gift card goes to Maxine Clinton. Thank you so much for joining us, and congratulations.
Congratulations.
All right, thanks, Brad.
All right.